Joe, if you've not heard, it's official. The station fire has been ruled arson. If you know who started it, officials are offering a $100,000 reward. We were off last week because Channel 4's transmitter was in danger, and this platform was being used as a backup. Not everybody thought television did a good job covering those fires. Supervisor Antonovich was upset there wasn't enough wall-to-wall live coverage. One critic from the LA Times suggested there wasn't enough coverage. Another critic from the Times complained there was enough coverage, but the wrong kind. I'm sure the supervisor has more important decisions to make than how much time local television dedicates to news coverage. And the people at the Times can't seem to agree. Ron, you're the former editor of the LA Daily News. What'd you think about TV's job?
Well, I think the papers were early on, did a terrible job. But then it wasn't a big fire.
Right.
And I think that's really the question that Antonovich is using a smokescreen to cover up, which is, how did a fire without any wind go from 3,500 acres to suddenly being 50, 100, almost 200,000 acres? Was the response slow? Did they set a backfire that got out of control, thinking they were gonna burn up some of that brush? I'd like to see the after-action report on exactly what happened hour by hour in the first 24 to 48 hours of this fire. It's true, everybody was slow to react because it didn't look like the biggest fire that we've seen in years.
And the word now, of course, that it's arson, and I think pretty much everybody suspected that. And what frustrates me is when you get into these cases, Charlotte, and oftentimes they turn out to be arson, what do? Because no one's going to have the money to make good on all the services that were provided, all the land that was destroyed. What do you do to those people?
Yeah, it's difficult. It's a difficult problem. But, you know, I don't really buy the argument that it was a small fire at first, because the truth, what really upsets me and infuriates me about the media when there's a fire is that they talk about the people that are threatened, which is fine, and then they talk about structures, but that's all that matters. There's no discussion about the wildlife who are dying, about the trees that are dying. And that, a big fire, if a lot of wildlife are dying, to me, that's a big fire, and that's important.
Well, let me jump in. I'll let you finish, but let me jump in. If memory serves me correctly, I do believe that the majority of stations in this city did report on wildlife and animals that had to be transported. Now, you didn't see that?
I saw a little bit of that,
okay,
but I usually don't see any of it. And I did see a little bit because we had some animal sanctuaries up in that area,
right,
and there was reporting on those. Now, I think that maybe is what brought it into the discussion, but normally there's literally nothing said about that on any channel. I do think it's probably difficult for the people who live in that area to turn on the TV and see that there really isn't much, if anything, being said about the fire when it's affecting them so greatly. And I admit I was flipping through, and I really only found it on one channel at a time. On the other hand, I also don't like it when they inundate every channel with the same thing, and you think about all these kids that are home thinking, oh, they preempted my shows again. So I can see there needs to be some kind of a balance, and I don't know how you go about that.
You know, and I think that's a good point. I think the supervisor was a bit confused or shocked that every station in town was not full on this thing 24 hours a day, because most of the time in LA, and Ron will attest to it in his time at the Daily News, that's exactly how it operates. But I think the point is well taken here, Ron, early on when you made the statement. At first, no one really knew what was going on, and it didn't seem as bad as it turned out to be. All right.